may have stalled the process, but not even his resistance could protect Sarah Ferguson from what came next. When King Charles III ruled in favor of eviction, it wasn't just Andrew's downgrade to a modest Sandringham property that made headlines. It was Sarah's silent collapse. Left behind in the decaying grandeur of Royal Lodge, surrounded by staff but disconnected from support, her loss goes deeper than square footage. It's the quiet humiliation of watching your past, titles, connections, security, dismantled by Crown trying to save its image. And in that mission, sentiment has no place. This eviction is a final punctuation on an era the royal family is desperate to end, one stained by unaccountable privilege and unresolved scandal. Sarah Ferguson's removal is a message. If you love getting the real story behind the palace walls, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. No matter your past proximity to power, there's no immunity in the age of accountability. Her emotional unraveling and financial vulnerability reveal the ruthlessness of reform when appearances matter more than legacy. It's not just a house that's gone, it's an identity the monarchy is determined to erase. The gates are closing on Royal Lodge, and Sarah Ferguson is watching it all slip away. Not just the estate, but everything it ever represented. After more than 30 years of calling that mansion home, the final ruling has landed. King Charles III has made his decision. She's out. And yes, she's in tears, because this isn't just about an address. This is the end of her royal identity, her proximity to power, and the illusion that she still somehow belonged to a world that moved on without her. This moment is a culmination of something much bigger than just Sarah. It's part of the royal family's not-so-subtle attempt to clean house, to purge what they now consider leftover pieces from a time when scandal, privilege, and outdated loyalties were swept under the rug. But now, in a monarchy obsessed with modernizing its image, there's no room for nostalgia. If you love getting the real story behind the palace walls, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. The Royal Lodge had become one of the last strongholds of that old world. And Sarah? She was its most visible reminder. Gone are the days when quiet deals and status by association were enough to secure a soft landing. This ruling doesn't just eject her physically from property, it strips her of every last remnant of security that came with it. The life she once led, the connection to the crown, the social standing that Royal Lodge implied, all gone. Prince Andrew may be moving to a more modest residence on the Sandringham estate, but even in disgrace, he remains technically a royal. Sarah doesn't have that buffer. Her marriage ended nearly 3 decades ago. Her title was removed, and now the one thing she had left, the home, is being taken from her too. What's left is a woman emotionally gutted, financially strained, and increasingly isolated. Inside Royal Lodge, her day-to-day has shrunk to just a few rooms. She's leaning heavily on staff for comfort, rarely seen, and reportedly devastated. The mansion that once made her feel protected is now a cold, quiet reminder of everything she's lost. The longer the eviction process dragged on, thanks in part to Andrew's alleged legal stalling tactics, the more suffocating her reality became. She wasn't just facing a move. She was enduring a slow, humiliating dismantling of everything familiar. And behind the walls of Royal Lodge, another rift was growing, her relationship with Andrew. For years, their post-divorce setup baffled the public. Living under the same roof, co-parenting their daughters, appearing at events as a kind of unofficial duo. But this crisis has fractured what was already fragile. Tensions have boiled over, and what was once a curious arrangement now feels like a broken alliance. As Andrew focused on protecting his interests, Sarah found herself more and more alone in a home that was becoming less hers by the day. The symbolic weight of this eviction can't be overstated. Royal Lodge wasn't just a luxury estate. It was a status marker, a quiet claim to relevance. For Sarah, it was a last link between her and the royal institution, a place that said, I may not have a title, but I still belong. That illusion is over. This final decision by the monarchy is surgical. It's not emotional. It's strategic. It's about drawing a clean line between the modern royal image and the lingering shadows of past scandals. Sarah Ferguson, once embraced by the institution, flaws and all, is now viewed as part of the very image the crown is working to erase. The royal family wants transparency, accountability, a curated public-facing version of itself. That version doesn't include someone who symbolizes past chaos. And in that effort, they've made an example of her. There's no payout, no golden goodbye. Royal Lodge reportedly needs extensive repairs, which means the financial negotiations have offered little comfort. Sarah isn't being compensated in any meaningful way. There's no windfall coming. The future she now faces is financially uncertain. Without the protection of a royal household or a formal title, she'll need to build something of her own, and fast. She's done it before. But this time, she doesn't have a royal roof over her head to cushion the fall. Her only real options now are media, publishing, and public appearances, none of which guarantee consistent income. She may turn to her daughters for support, but even that dynamic is complicated by the public nature of the fall. The truth is, Sarah Ferguson is about to live what so many former royals and aristocrats fear most, the transition from relevance to redundancy. And while the palace might see this as necessary reform, the personal cost is real. Sarah isn't just a public figure. She's a human being, one who's experiencing complete identity collapse. Her life has been built around royal structures. Losing her home means losing the final scaffolding holding that identity together. And for what? To serve the narrative that the royal family is evolving? To prove they're not afraid to cut ties, even with those once close to the inner circle? Maybe. But this isn't a clean break. It's a messy one. A woman is being left to face financial vulnerability, emotional exhaustion, and public scrutiny without any of the tools or protections that once insulated her. She's not walking away from Royal Lodge. She's being pushed out of it. And the timing isn't lost on anyone. Sarah had just started to rebuild her public image, speaking openly about her cancer diagnosis, taking on new projects, trying to reconnect with audiences. There was a sense she might be entering a new phase, one where she wasn't defined by her past missteps. But the eviction has dragged her right back into a narrative she can't control, one of rejection, loss, and exile. The Royal Lodge has stood as a symbol for decades of tradition, privilege, and continuity. Now, it's the site of a quiet, symbolic execution, one that signals not only the end of Sarah's chapter, but the end of a wider era in the royal institution. Her departure isn't just about her. It's about what the monarchy is becoming and what it's willing to leave behind to get there. If you're still watching this unfold and feeling like the ground just shifted under the monarchy, you're not wrong. Let us know where you stand. Do you think Sarah Ferguson deserved a softer exit? Or was this exactly the kind of accountability the royals have long avoided? Hit like if you've been following the Royal Lodge drama. Subscribe so you don't miss the next scandal or power shift. And drop a comment. Is this reform, revenge, or just another cold move in the palace playbook? Whatever it is, one thing's clear. Sarah Ferguson is out. And the royal gates aren't opening back up anytime soon. And just like that, one of the longest lingering figures of the royal sidelines has been finally cut off. No quiet compromise. No drawn-out limbo. It's over. Sarah Ferguson's presence at Royal Lodge once felt like a historical glitch the monarchy never bothered to correct. She wasn't officially royal anymore, but she wasn't exactly not royal either. 4 years, she existed in this strange twilight zone, showing up at events, living under the same roof as a disgraced ex-husband, and occasionally reminding the public of her softer side through charity appearances and media interviews. But now the glitch has been fixed, and not gently. The decision from King Charles to evict her isn't some passive shift. It's a pointed declaration, a hard boundary. Sarah is no longer just irrelevant. She's incompatible with the new monarchy, with a polished image, with a curated narrative that's all about modernization, discipline, and removing the shadows of scandal. There's no way to sugarcoat it. She's been erased. And you can feel it in how this entire process has unfolded. Legal delays, logistical battles, internal tensions between her and Andrew. But at the center of it all, Sarah remained isolated, emotionally and literally. She reportedly confined herself to parts of the house, surrounded by staff who become her only consistent support system. And it's not because she chose to hide. It's because she saw what was coming and had no way to stop it. This wasn't just a property dispute. This was a final judgment on her place in the institution. And the answer was, you no longer have one. The Royal Lodge had been more than a home. It was a shield. Against the press. Against public scrutiny. Against the cold fact that Technically, she had no claim to anything royal anymore. But within those walls, she could pretend she still mattered, still belonged. That illusion is shattered. And it's hard not to see the timing of it all as calculated. The monarchy has been under pressure, from the public, the press, and even from within, to clean up its image, to define who belongs and who doesn't, to draw a clear line between a scandal-prone past and a future built on curated respectability. And Sarah, like it or not, falls squarely on the wrong side of that line. Her past is a minefield of tabloid chaos, financial blunders, awkward interviews, and public gaffes. But for a while, it seemed like the institution was willing to look the other way. She wasn't causing problems. She wasn't speaking out. She stayed close, quiet, and, in her own way, loyal. Turns out, that didn't buy her much. Because now, as the monarchy doubles down on its image overhaul, she's become a symbol of everything they want to leave behind. Her eviction isn't just a personal loss. It's a message. The new royal playbook has no patience for ambiguity, and no space for people whose presence reminds the world of the monarchy's less flattering chapters. What's striking is the contrast between the institution's cold efficiency and Sarah's emotional unraveling. She's not just losing a house, she's losing a part of herself. The woman who once rode in royal carriages, stood on palace balconies, and dined with global leaders is now facing the same logistical nightmare as anyone being forced to move out of a home they've lived in for decades. Except she doesn't have a backup plan. There's no new palace suite waiting for her. No funded relocation. No official title to cushion the blow. Just legal paperwork, financial uncertainty, and the very real burden of figuring out how to survive without the structure that's defined her entire adult life. And let's not forget, Sarah has always struggled with money. She's admitted it. From botched business deals to loans that spark more headlines than profits, she's never had a stable financial foundation outside of a connection to Andrew and the royal brand. With both of those support systems collapsing, she's entering this new chapter with no clear financial safety net. That's the real fallout here, not just emotional, but economic. She now faces the uncomfortable task of generating income in the public arena where sympathy is fleeting and attention spans are shorter than ever. Yes, she could write another book, launch a podcast, or lean into speaking engagements. But without the royal halo, those opportunities are harder to land and harder to monetize. And the public, while curious, is fickle. They may be fascinated by a downfall today, but will they still care 6 months from now, when she's trying to build a new brand from scratch? The royal shine fades fast when you're no longer in the family, and while we're here, let's not gloss over the deeply fractured relationship between her and Andrew, something that's only worsened through this process. What once looked like a post-divorce friendship, maybe even a codependent partnership, now seems more like a toxic arrangement crumbling under pressure. The delays, the passive-aggressive tactics, the refusal to leave, it hasn't just cost them their home, it's laid bare the dysfunction that kept them stuck in the same house long after their marriage ended. It's poetic, really, their final chapter of cohabitance ending not with a public reconciliation or graceful exit, but with legal battles, emotional estrangement, and a shared eviction notice. And in the middle of it all, Sarah is now staring down the one thing she's been avoiding for decades: true independence. Not the kind dressed up in quirky media appearances or charity speeches. The kind where you wake up and realize that for the first time in your adult life, there is no royal structure beneath your feet. Just you, alone. It's easy to dismiss Sarah Ferguson as just another royal ex trying to cling to relevance. But what's happening here is about more than status. It's about identity. About the very real psychological toll of being cast out of a system that once shaped your entire world. Because when you spend 3 decades living in a palace-adjacent dream, even on the sidelines, it rewires your sense of self. You get used to the rituals, the proximity, the unspoken sense that you almost still matter. That proximity becomes identity. And when that proximity is ripped away, you're left with silence, with tears, with a future you don't recognize. And sure, she'll survive. She always does. But this isn't survival with dignity. This is starting over in public, under scrutiny, with no title, no assets, and no clear plan. This is what the end of privilege really looks like. Not a scandal, not a dramatic tell-all, but a quiet, slow-motion exile. And while the monarchy might see this as a necessary step toward reform, the personal toll is undeniable. Because behind the headlines and photo ops are real people, messy, flawed, complicated people who once belonged to something bigger. And when that something decides you're no longer part of the narrative, it doesn't just affect your reputation. It shatters your foundation. Sarah Ferguson is no longer just a former royal. She's a case study in what happens when an institution evolves and leaves its people behind. And her story, painful, awkward, tragic, is a warning to anyone who thinks proximity to power is the same as permanence. There's something uniquely devastating about being the last to realize you've been written out of the story. For Sarah Ferguson, the former Duchess of York, that moment came when the final word dropped. Royal Lodge was no longer Hayes. The gates weren't just closing, they were closing on her. And after decades of hanging on by association, her chapter in the royal narrative has been abruptly, irreversibly shut. What stings most is the brutal clarity of it all. No soft PR statement. No dignified transition. Just a firm, calculated move by King Charles III that left no room for interpretation. Her time was up. It wasn't just a decision to reclaim a piece of property. It was a symbolic purge. The monarchy is in rebrand mode, and Sarah represents exactly what they are trying to bury. The message? If you don't fit the new model, you don't belong in the house. And this house, Royal Lodge, was no ordinary estate. It wasn't just a roof over her head. It was legacy. It was identity. It was a last, fragile grip on the institution that had once welcomed her with open arms, then spent decades distancing itself at every turn. The lodge was her security, her sanctuary, her camouflage in a world that had long since stopped treating her like a royal. Strip that away, and what's left? A woman in her 60s, in tears, isolated in the echo of a once glamorous life, now reduced to quiet desperation behind palace walls that no longer recognize her. Let's not forget, Sarah stayed at Royal Lodge post-divorce because, despite the formal separation from Prince Andrew in 1996, the two never truly untangled their lives. Their bizarre post-marital living arrangement kept her tethered to the royal system. 4 years. It looked like a clever workaround, a loophole in royal protocol that let her remain near the family without officially being of the family. But now, that loophole has been sealed. And it's not just about Sarah and Andrew anymore. It's about the monarchy drawing hard boundaries in a new era of accountability. No more blurred lines. No more sentimental exceptions. The royal family is trimming the fat, and Sarah, despite her loyalty, her public restraint, her refusal to throw anyone under the bus, has been deemed unnecessary. And the emotional fallout? You can feel it in every report. Sources close to her describe breakdowns. Isolation. Despair. She's not just sad, she's unraveling. In the mansion she once called home, she now drifts like a guest overstaying her welcome. Staff, the very people once tasked with managing royal formality, are now her emotional lifeline. It's a deeply human collapse playing out in a space designed for opulence and performance. And the financial picture doesn't offer any reprieve. Let's be blunt. Sarah's future is financially unstable. Without a royal stipend or official title, she has no automatic source of income. Her attempts over the years to build independent ventures, books, media projects, brand collaborations, have had mixed success at best. And now, without the backdrop of Royal Lodge, without the implied royal proximity, those opportunities will only get harder to come by. Because in this economy, formally married to a prince doesn't guarantee relevance or rent money. And while Andrew is being quietly shuffled to a smaller property on the Sandringham estate, still under crown control, still within the system, Sarah has no such fallback. She's not part of the firm. She's an outsider, an ex, and whatever sympathy she might garner from the public doesn't translate to institutional support. There's no severance package for being ex-royal adjacent. And then there's the emotional cliff she's now standing on. Her entire adult life has been shaped by the rhythms, rituals, and structures of royal existence. Losing her home isn't just about moving vans and forwarding addresses. It's about identity fragmentation. She's not just being evicted from a house. She's being erased from a world. And the worst part? She stayed loyal. Through the scandals, the scrutiny, the press disasters, Sarah never fully turned on the monarchy. She could have. At times, people expected her to. But she didn't. She played the long game, hoping loyalty would buy her peace, or at least protection. It didn't, because when the institution decides you're expendable, it doesn't matter how long you stayed silent. You're still cut off, cleanly, decisively, and without sentiment. And this is where the story shifts from royal drama to something more intimate. Because beneath the headlines and strategic cleanups is a woman who's visibly grieving a life she tried to hold together for far too long. A woman who watched the family she married into slowly close ranks. A woman who kept showing up, kept participating, kept smiling, even when she was no longer invited to stand on the balcony. She kept thinking maybe they'd let her stay. That proximity meant permanence. It didn't. And let's talk about that word, proximity. It's so central to this entire saga, because Sarah Ferguson, for all her missteps and misjudgments, always remained close. To Andrew, to the institution, to the edges of power. She never had real influence, but she had access. And in the royal world, access is everything. Now, that access is gone, and so is the illusion. The institution has decided it doesn't want to carry the weight of its past associations. Sarah is a reminder of an era the royals would rather erase, one defined by scandal, indulgence, and blurred boundaries. Removing her from Royal Lodge is about more than reclaiming a property. It's about rewriting the narrative. And in that narrative, Sarah no longer has a part, which leaves her exactly where she is now, standing in the wreckage of a semi-royal identity with no clear path forward and no institutional scaffolding left to cling to. And look, she's not innocent. Her tabloid history is long. The toe-sucking scandal, the cash for access debacle, the questionable financial decisions. But none of that changes the fact that what's happening to her now is a kind of emotional excommunication that feels, frankly, harsh. Not because the palace doesn't have a right to evolve, but because the human cause of that evolution is rarely acknowledged. Sarah Ferguson isn't just a symbol. She's a person. And this decision, this final verdict, tears away every layer of identity she spent decades trying to preserve. And so, here we are. Royal Lodge will belong to someone else soon. The staff will move on. The furniture will be boxed up. And Sarah Ferguson, once welcomed into the most exclusive family in the world, will face an uncertain future, financially unstable, emotionally untethered, and very much alone. Let us know how you see it. Should the royal family have handled this with more grace? Or was this inevitable, part of the brutal calculus of an institution trying to survive in the 21st century? Hit the like button if you think this royal reckoning is far from over. Subscribe for more dramatic dives into the fallout of fame, power, and privilege. And leave a comment with your take. Was this reform, rejection, or just another royal relationship left to rot behind palace walls? Whatever it was, one thing is certain. The final verdict has been delivered, and Sarah Ferguson is no longer part of the royal equation.